Hari Om. Om Gajananam Bhutaganadisevitam Kapitha Jambo Phalasara Bhakshitam Umasutam Shoka Vinashakaranam Namami Vigneshwara Pada Pankajam. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Namaste. Welcome to DISHA 8 of new series, which is an inward journey to discover our inner strength and happiness through Bhagavad Gita. As we proceed in our endeavor to revise chapter 2, today we will take up verses 54 to 63, and Sri Villas will help us in our effort. Sri Villas will also cover Jnana Yoga topic of Tattva Bodha. As always, this is followed by spiritual story by Dr. Hegde sir and teaching quiz by Srimati Indumati. Before Sir gives us introduction to the day's topic, let us listen to Srimati Pannaga, who is going to chant and explain the shloka Ajam Nirvikalpam. Over to you, Pannaga.
Harihi Om, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Ajam Nirvikalpam Nirakaramekam Niranandamanandamadvaita Purnam Param Nirgunam Nirvishesham Niriham Parabrahmarupam Ganesham Bhajema. This is the first of 3 verses composed by Sri Adi Shankaracharya. Though the shloka is addressed to Lord Ganesha, they brilliantly capture the essence of Vedantic teaching. In the next slide, let us understand the meaning of each word. Ajam is unborn, Nirvikalpam, the changeless, Nirakaram, the formless, Ekam, the single one, Nirananda, beyond Ananda, Ananda, yet full of Ananda, Advaita, non-dual, Purnam, complete, Param, supreme, Nirgunam, attributeless, Nirvishesham, beyond any differences, Niriham, beyond desire. Thus we see all these expressions do not glorify the physical form of Lord Ganesha, but instead draw our attention to what he represents, the Nirguna Parabrahman. Next slide, sir. This last line is common to all 3 verses. Parabrahma Rupam Ganesham Bhajema. I worship that Lord Ganesha, who is the symbol of Parabrahma, the supreme Brahman. Ganesha is that formless divinity encapsulated in a magnificent form for the benefit of the devotee. He is the supreme consciousness that pervades all and brings order in this universe. Hari Om. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Panaga, for the very nice prayer. Sadashiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om. We continue our series of DISHA, and as we are dealing with the 2nd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, which is a revision of the entire, or which is a summary of the entire Bhagavad Gita, every aspect of this chapter is so important that there are no verses that we can possibly leave. And we now we have shifted from Karma Yoga to Jnana Yoga once again, when we have come to the sthitaprajña portion. Karma Yoga is a sadhana that has to be done, whereas Jnana Yoga is something that we need to know. Once we come to Jnana Yoga and then you look at Karma Yoga, you see a tremendous shift in the way that you function. Wherever there is effort, you will see there is the ego, there is someone who is doing. And Jnana Yoga is all about akarta, abhokta, and therefore, the more there is an understanding of our true nature, you will see the need to prove anything to anybody disappears. The need to do something. On the other hand, there will be a significant drop in action and a greater amount of facilitation or allovingness to happen. and that is the pinnacle of Karma Yoga. Before Ullas speaks to us about these important verses on the sthitaprajña portion of the Bhagavad Gita, my job would be to highlight some of these verses which I would think are so particularly important that students of Gita, particularly when we are looking at Gita for inner strength and happiness, let us be focused on these verses. The whole sthitaprajña portion has come because of a question from Arjuna. All of us seekers and those interested in spirituality are fascinated to know about how a sthitaprajña, how an enlightened being, or what are the characteristics of an enlightened being. And therefore, if you ever hear of the presence, we would like to travel long distance to see. And if such a person is not alive in the body, we still try to visit the samadhi place and feel the presence of such a sthitaprajña. And that was Arjuna's question. What are the characteristics? Ka, Bhasha. How does he speak? How does he sit? How does he walk? And Krishna gives a brilliant answer by telling us not only the features, and also, if you're very keen, what are the sādhanās that we need to do in order to become a sthitaprajña. The opening verse of Shri Krishna is absolutely brilliant. And this is one verse that we need to remember, we need to understand, we need to meditate on. Just this much, Atmanevatmana tushtaha. In fact, this is the key or the sutra verse on the basis of which the entire sthitaprajña portion is elaborated. Atman evatmana tushtaha. A person who has discovered purnatvam, fulfillment in oneself. For example, when we are fast asleep, we are not in touch with any person, any situation, any object, and yet we experience a sense of limitlessness, a sense of purnatvam. Can we have that state, same state, while we are awake? A certain enlightened master was asked, what is your greatest accomplishment? And this is what he said, here I am alone with myself. Although he is by himself, he has discovered purnatvam just by himself. Swami Anubhavananda has given a modern day definition of what is Atmanevatmana tushtaha. Such a person has no need to prove anything to anybody. Such a person is so fulfilled, he has really nothing to do, nowhere to go. There is nothing to gain in this world and therefore nothing to lose. Of course, all of us have certain roles to play. And if these roles we can play 100%, which he nicely calls it as Karnatak, and then in our life, we will encounter difficult persons who cannot be changed, difficult situations which cannot be changed. Let me gratefully accept and have a sense of zero complaints. When I am in that state, when you encounter sorrow, when you encounter happiness, we are in a state of samatvam. We do not get too excited. We do not get too depressed. And then Vita Raga Bhaya Krodha. A person is not affected by fear or any strong attachment. Desires will be there. But what is important to see, can these desires be non-binding? What do you mean by a non-binding desire? I want it, but if it is not there, it is okay. A binding desire is, without that, I will not be happy. If my happiness or my contentment depends on its fulfillment, then it becomes a binding desire. There is another verse which says, Yas sarvatra nabi sneha. That means, if I develop a very strong attachment to things and objects and persons I come across, that becomes a problem. Here the word sneha really means glue or gum. And Shri Krishna warns that because the mind has a tendency to become attached. So can we therefore learn to relate in love? And the index of true love is how much freedom we are able to give to those people whom we relate to. So true love is giving freedom to the person that you relate to. There is another verse where Yada Samharate Chayam Kurma, the example of a tortoise is given, because the sense organs are the first interaction with distracting objects. And whenever you find yourself in a situation where the sense objects may tend to sway your mind, remember this tortoise example. Shri Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita and these verses has told us about Param Drishtva. That means if you have the vision of the higher or the divine principle in you, then even though your sense objects have seen distracting things, it has come to your mind, and the mind tends to ruminate on rasavarjam rasopyasi. But still, when there is the vision of the higher me, I am not so much affected. So the key word here is Param Drishtva. And once there is Param Drishtva, there is another powerful verse which tells us the dangers of how anybody can be swayed. Yatato api kaunteya purushasya vipaschitaha. Vipaschitaha means yati, a sannyasi, a person who puts in a lot of effort. And vipaschitaha, that means the person is an enlightened person, a realized person, or on the path of realization, even though he is a very wise person and is on the path of sannyasi. That means he's a person who puts in a lot of efforts. Indriyani pramatini. Shri Krishna tells us that the sense organs are so powerful that they can confuse the mind. And therefore what he does, yukta asita matparaha tani sarvani samyamya. Therefore we need to control on your sense organs. Yukta asita matparaha, put into the driver's seat the higher you represented by the Shri Krishna principle. We have the wonderful chariot example where my body is the chariot. My sense organs are represented by the horses. Now the horses have to be controlled by the reins which represent the mind, but the mind is controlled by the intellect. And who is the intellect? The higher principle. If I can put Shri Krishna as my Parthasarathi, then the journey of my life will be a success. In verses 62 and 63, Shri Krishna here gives the ladder of a human fall. By this particular verse, which is worth remembering, at least the first line, Dhyayato Vishaya Pumsaha. See, Dhyayato means to meditate. Whenever we sit to meditate, we are very, very often distracted. But can you see yourself how much we can meditate on a negative object? Somebody who has said something which is upsetting, those words we tend to think about it again and again in a form of a thought attack. These words or these negative thoughts we can very continually meditate on. And when this sort of negative thoughts come into your mind, remember these words: watch your thoughts, they become your words. Watch your words, they become your actions. Watch your actions, it becomes your habits. Watch your habits, it becomes your character. Watch your character, it becomes your destiny. Therefore, in the initial stages itself, when there is a negative thought, don't meditate on them. Negative thoughts come, but you have the power through Param Drishtva, through Thani Sarvani Samyamya, to be able to take away those thoughts and prevent this ladder of fall. We will listen to Ullas as he explains all these verses and brings about Jnana Yoga. And once Jnana Yoga is the prajña, and once we allow this prajña to become a sthitaprajña, our journey in life becomes successful. Over to you, Ullas.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha, Hari Om. So far we have seen that Arjun has gone through describing about his problem in chapter 1, which we saw was raga, shoka, and then ultimately into moha. And then in chapter 2, he does a wise thing that he falls on the feet of Krishna in his Sharanagati and asks for, what should I do? This is something that we all should also do. Having done that, then Krishna speaks to him and talks about what exactly is jnana yoga, because only then he would know about his self, and then only all his problems that he discussed would go away. And then if you find jnana yoga a little difficult, then he also talks about karma yoga as a stepping stone, as a yogyata step to get to jnana yoga. Having talked about all these things, now we are going to get into the sthitaprajña section of the second chapter, which is a very beautiful and sweet section. Now, what we see in our lives is that we have acquired a lot of knowledge. We are pretty much having a separate library in our minds, in which every time we go through a new text, it just makes its own position, but it is very safely staying there. In our database language, they tell us that it is very important to see how you store the information, but it is equally important is that how easy it is to retrieve the information. But sadly, sometimes what happens is we are so nice in storing that information, in keeping that in one good portion of our mind that is always intact, but we never make use of it. As you see in this left picture, that our life is separate and all the information, all the jnana, all the prajna that we have gathered is separate, but it is of no use. If I have a paracetamol in my house, but I am having fever, but if I don't take it, it is of no real use. So what is the sadhana that we need to do is we need to go from prajna to sthitaprajña. Sir has already given a lot of beautiful summary of all the verses about sthitaprajña. I would like to emphasize more on that there is knowledge about it, but we need to actually practice it. We need to actually practice it to make this disha really help us in our lives. So this jnana and life have to mix with each other, and then finally we will be able to enjoy life. Like how Swamiji says that we are here to express happiness, not to know that our real nature is happiness and all, but to actually express happiness, to become that perfect instrument which does not have its own purpose per se, but who is there to fulfill his purpose. For that, we need to become that perfect instrument. And for that, we need to actually make sure that all this jnana is implemented in our lives. Application is power. Knowledge just is not. Having said that, these are the two things that we will discuss today. What are the traits of a sthitaprajña, and how do I achieve that status? What all do I need to do to get there? Now, the first thing is Arjuna asks this as a question. We need to understand from Gita, another thing is, what type of questions are we asking? We see that all the questions in Gita, most of them are very, very pertinent, very, very intelligent questions. Here Arjuna says, what is the benefit of all this hard work that I should be doing? You have told me you should do jnana yoga, you should do karma yoga. But why should I do all that? What is it that I'm going to get? Basically, he wants to know what is that view from the top of the mountain I'm going to get, for which you are asking me to do all this arduous trekking. What is that? He says, basically, why we want to know what is the end goal is because if I do my efforts, but if I don't do them in the right direction, then forget about reaching the destination. I might actually go away from the destination. So if I know the destination, then I know the right direction. And so all my efforts can fall into right direction. And then I have the hope to reach the destination. Another benefit of asking this question is, sure, many times I know that, okay, kindness is a good thing, but maybe it is not in my heart to do that. Swamiji says, I will not be able to do it without a heartburn, but we should still do it. You fake it till we are able to make it. But what should I fake unless I know what I need to fake? So these are the qualities again discussed so that we can implement them, even whether we are fully convinced about them yet or not, but slowly, gradually, once we keep doing them, we will reach there. Another thing is, we always are under the question that well, I don't know how much I have progressed. Am I really getting there? Am I actually progressing, or I'm going away? So this is a good dipstick test that we can do, that these are the things, this is the North Star. We can see where we are. So this question is very important. I believe a question is very, very important in setting the tone of a discussion. Even if we are in an interview or on any discourse, the question defines the direction of the entire discussion. So here Arjuna says, sthitaprajñasya ka bhasha, samadhisthasya keshava, sthitadhihi kim prabhasheta, kimasita vrajeta kim. He says, this blessed sthitaprajña, this jñāni, what are the characteristics of this person? How does he behave with the external world? Is his physical appearance any different? Is he wearing some different types of clothes, or he's always in Shirshasana, or he's hanging from a tree, or he's speaking or never speaking, or how does he walk? How do I know that this person is sthitaprajña? Or more importantly, how would I ever know that I have become a sthitaprajña? And he uses three different terms here, which pretty much mean the same. But for our sake, let us understand sthitaprajñasya, that person who has doubt-free knowledge, who is situated firmly. Sthita means sthita. For example, Lal Killa is sthita in Delhi. It is not moving around like our minds, which is sometimes here, sometimes there. Sometimes we follow our learning, sometimes we don't. But this guy is sthita. He's established there firmly. His knowledge has no doubt. Because only if you have no doubt is when you're going to stay there. Otherwise, the moment doubt creeps in, he'll again go oscillate. Then samadhisthasya. He never forgets his real nature. He's always dwelling in his own real nature. Why will I ever have a doubt-free knowledge? Because if I have knowledge about my own self, then there is no doubt. And the third thing is sthitadihi. In his intellect, this whole thing is like a fact. For us, it is still a little bit of a notion, a little bit of, well, it does make sense. Swamiji is saying so, so perhaps it must be right. But it is not like 2 plus 2 is equal to 4 for us yet. But for this person, the sthitadihi, it is like that. It is like a 2 plus 2 is equal to 4. So he wants to understand, what is it that these people have, this jñāni has? How does he interact with the world? Please tell me. And that is why Swamiji also says that having a guru is very important, so that we don't fall into the trap of that, okay, that person is just hanging from the tree, or he's never speaking, or he's going into the Himalayas naked in the absolute winter. Those things are not needed. So what is needed? A guru can tell us. So now Shri Krishna answers him that. He says, Prajahati yada kaman sarvan partha manogatan. Sarvan kaman, all the desires, manogatan, that are wriggling in our mind. Where do all the desires come? Obviously, they come in our mind only. And mind is meant for the desires. That, like Swamiji says, that desires will not come in my eyes. They will come in the mind only. And it is absolutely okay. The point is, what type of desires are there? Desires by themselves are not bad. There are dharmic ways of desire also. And then the most important thing is that these desires have to be non-binding. We will discuss that a little later. But here, Shri Krishna says that all the desires that you have, why do we have desires in the first place? Because we feel that we are incomplete, apurnatvam. So I need something else to make myself complete. That's the whole theory of desire. I need that car, that house, that person in my life to make myself complete. That is the whole reason why we have these desires. But this jnani person, he's atmanyev atmana tushtaha. He is satisfied by himself. He doesn't need any external stimulus for becoming happy. For example, there is sun and then there is nuclear reactor. The nuclear reactor always needs a fuel to actually burn, but sun, automatically it keeps on, it's self-sufficient. So like that, if a person is self-sufficient, then he will not really have any desires in his mind. So he would just give up all these desires. Prajahati yada kaman. All those desires are given up. Now, what does this mean? That does the jnani doesn't do anything? Swamiji explains it with an example that, don't the waters in the ocean move? Or how different is that with the motion of waters in the rivers? The waters in the rivers are moving for a particular purpose. They need to achieve something. They need to get somewhere. But the ocean water, even though it is also moving, but it is moving out of fullness, completeness. It doesn't have to do anything. It doesn't have to go anywhere. Like I said, Swamiji also says that just it is expressing its happiness. So that is what when we also need to do, and that is what this jnani does. He is atmanyeva atmana tushtaha, and he has given up all his desires. And what sadhana we need to do for that? We have an ignorance of incompleteness. Then the only thing that can help us is the knowledge that we are complete, we are purna. For example, darkness can only be removed by light and not by any other action. In the next verse, he just describes some of the behaviors of this jnani. He says, Dukkheshu anudvigna manaha, Sukheshu vigataspraha. What we do is that we become very excited when it is happy conditions, and we become very disturbed when it is a sorrow. But why are we talking about sorrow when we are discussing the features of jnani? Why is jnani having all these dukkha conditions? The thing is, there is prarabdha for jnani also. Their external conditions will still be good or bad for him also. Nothing changes outside. It is how one's attitude is towards them, how he interacts with those situations. That is what changes. So now how he interacts is Vita Raga Bhaya Krodha. Raga, Bhaya and Krodha. He becomes Vita, means he's dispassionate about them. Now he gives up all those. Raga is attachment. Whenever we like something, he becomes attached to it. And if we get it, we have a lot of fear of losing it. If we don't get it, we become angry towards it. But this jnani does not have any of those problems. He is equanimous. He's just na kuch pana, na kuch hona. He's right there. He's atmanyeva atmatushta. He doesn't, unless he wants something, there is no reason for becoming bhaya or krodha. Sthitadhihi muniruchyate. That muni is called sthitadhihi. That is the one who is jnani. So for example, in the picture, if we see, once we have the shoes on, it doesn't matter whether the road is flat, whether it is rocky, whether it is uphill, whether it is downhill. We are protected, we are insulated with that. So that is what jnani is. So we should also wear those shoes and not just let them be sitting in the shoe rack. Yes, sarvatran abhisneha tattat prapya shubhashubham. Whatever are the conditions, whether it is good or bad, he doesn't hate anything, he doesn't like anything, he's not rejoicing or anything. Whatever favorable, unfavorable conditions, he's wearing those gloves when he's working with the electrical components. Now, whether everything goes fine, whether there is a little bit of spark, he is protected. He doesn't care. He's just doing what he's supposed to do. He's doing what he's there to do. That is how you convert your IQ to EQ, emotional quotient. And what is a quick way of checking it? Same thing, FIR. How frequently am I getting disturbed when things don't go as I have imagined them to be? What is the intensity I get disturbed? And what is my recovery time? How soon I come back to that? These are the various things that are describing how a jnani is. But Swamiji alerts us, the certificate we don't have to give to others. Oh, that person actually becomes a little agitated when bad conditions come. No, these all things are meant for self-assessment. We have to give that certificate to ourselves, how we are doing, how I am doing, not how others are doing, not how my close ones are doing, not how my company mates are doing, how I am doing. This is very, very important. Mostly what we end up doing is we know all these things, we don't apply on ourselves, but we apply on others. So this has to be very conscious. The importance of Guru is that he would bridge the understanding gap. He would tell us that no, you are Purna, you are Tattvamasi. But then it is us, even though we know the knowledge of swimming, we have to get into the water. We have to learn how to swim. And that has to be the sadhana which has to be done by the Shishya. So now we talk about what is the sadhana to achieve sthitaprajña. This is one of the most important things perhaps in this entire thing is Yada samharate chayam kurmo angani va sarvashah indriyani indriyarthebhyastasya prajña pratishtita. Indriyani, these sense organs have to be withdrawn from these sense objects. An example of a tortoise is given. At the hint of a danger, he's not very fast that he'll run like a deer, or he's not very fierce like another tiger that he'll fight. At the hint of a danger, all he does is he withdraws all his 5 limbs, 4 hands or 4 legs and the face, all 5 of them, and now he becomes solid. No problem, no issues. Now this is what is called Indriya Nigraha. That whenever we know that these are the problems, how world enters ourselves is through our sense organs. So we have to be very careful how we are opening up, where we are opening up our sense organs to, what we are listening to, what we are hearing. Those are the things which are very important. So once we are taking care of those, then rest of the things will automatically be taken care of. Like a small plant is there, it has to be protected. A small breeze can also uproot it. But once this thing gets established firmly in the ground, then it becomes a tree. Then even the strongest of winds cannot do anything. So like a tortoise, we just need to do Indriya Nigraha. And not just Indriya Nigraha, not just suppressing the desires, not by suppressing them, or not by like how grapes are sour, that, oh, well, we can't achieve something, so we are saying that we are actually withdrawing from that. No, by maturity, by understanding the futility of them, by knowing that how they can actually take us to a downward hill path, that we have to do. And one of the most important practices for that Swamiji has told us is that dekho, suno, bolo mat. There are 5 sense organs, but let's start with our tongue. Let us make sure that we have regulated that sense organ more than anything else first. Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehina. What happens is that even though now, let's say if I suppress my desires, what happens is that is still lingering in my mind. That rasa doesn't go away that easily. Now what do I do with that? Param drishtva. This is the key word here. Once I get that higher spiritual ananda, now all these things become lesser important. Now it doesn't matter. And many times we say, oh, poor, we don't really say, right, this, that, oh, poor Swamiji, he doesn't even have a TV, he doesn't have a great car, because we know that he's actually enjoying something higher. When we go for a camping, nobody says that, oh, these people don't have a TV, they have to just cook their own food on fire logs and all. We are there to enjoy a higher ananda. So once we have done that param drishtva, higher ananda we have felt, now even that mental desire, that longing also will go away, because now we know the ultimate. Then where is the need for these small things? Now this is a very important thing, is that indriyani pramathini, these sense organs are not very easy to deal with. Even yatato hyapi, the very wise, vipaschita purushasya vipaschita, those wise people who are also trying very hard, for them also these indriyani are always there, who are haranti manana, who are taking away their mind away from their goal. So there are 2 things which are being talked about here. Is one, please don't get disheartened. Even the strongest or the wisest of people, they fall into this trap. So it's okay. But on the other hand, also we are also being warned that please be alert. This is not an easy exercise. This is like a very strong churning rod is there, which is churning our mind. A one sense organ is like a one big churning rod. You can see how much turbulence it causes. And imagine there are 5 of them that we have. God help us. But then we have to don't be disheartened, be alert. This is a hard problem to solve, but it is a necessary problem and it will bear very good results. Tani sarvani samyamya yukta asit matpara. Now having controlled these or regulated these sense organs, again, they are not suppressed, they are regulated. Now what do? Now I cannot just leave my mind idle, because now it will start cooking so many other things. So you have to direct that, channelize that energy into a higher goal, into asit matpara. You avoid unnecessary pursuit and now pursue me. And that person who has regulated his sense organs, that person's prajña is pratishtita, is established. Now another cautionary tale is being told here, is the importance of thought discipline. Dhyayato vishayan pumsaha. Whatever we dwell upon, we become attached to it. Let's say a new model Bentley limited edition has come out in the market. And initially, if I don't dwell upon it, if I just saw an ad and then I move ahead in my life, then it is a different thing. But now if I keep thinking about it, well, yeah, that's a good car. Then I start making a little bit of an attachment with it. And then what happens when the attachment is sangas teshu pajayate, sangat sanjayate kamaha. Now kamaha comes into picture, that I now become desirous of it. And desire only leads to 2 places. If it gets fulfilled, we become greedy. If it doesn't get fulfilled, then we become krodhi. Then anger sets in. Once anger sets in, krodhat bhavati sammoha. We have a temporary loss of our discriminatory power, and that is called delusion, in which we don't really know what is right and what is wrong. In fact, we consider right as wrong and wrong as right. And if we still are not conscious about going back to our senses, then sammohat smriti vibhramaha. Now all the knowledge that we have learned so far, the loss of memory takes place. And still, if we don't take control, then loss of discriminatory power takes place permanently. Smriti bhamchat buddhinasho, the whole intellect goes away. And then once somebody's intellect goes away, nashaha, perish. So by this whole picture is being drawn just to make sure that we are alert at the very first step. Where are we dwelling? We have been told that dwell on your inner nature, on your real nature, on your higher nature, because whatever we dwell upon, that is what keeps going on in our mind. And if we dwell upon sense objects, then we know 8th step is here. But that's why we are being told to param drishtva, mat paraha. Those are the places where we need to focus our attention on. Now we'll just go quickly on Tattva Bodha topic also, Jnana Yoga. We have seen how a jnani behaves and how do I reach that jnaniness. Now this is about what exactly is Jnana Yoga. So Jnana Yoga is nothing but it's a discipline to acquire knowledge. Jnana is knowledge. But this is not any ordinary knowledge. This is the highest knowledge, knowledge of self, knowledge about myself. But I already know about myself, we might think. I am a man, I am so many years old, I have done this in my education. No, but that is all about body and mind. It is being talked about that self beyond body-mind complex. What am I beyond this outer covering? That is the real nature. That is what has been studied in Jnana Yoga. And why do we need to do that? To gain moksha, to claim that I am already liberated, but we need to make sure that we are established in that knowledge. So now what is moksha, liberation from what? What are we talking about? What is the sorrow from which we need liberation from? We have seen that whenever there are things around us, either we like them or we dislike them. So their presence or absence always is, making us go from sorrow to sorrow. Because if we want something, then there is an expectation, and our expectation is a potential of sorrow. So that is what we need liberation from, so that any presence or absence does not impact us. That's the Jnana Yoga. What are the virtues of this freedom, as talked about in the introduction to Vedanta, is that I need to have the thing that I'm able to accept the things that I'm not able to change. That much knowledge I should have. And the things that I can change, that I should have courage and willingness, and then actually the industriousness to do that, to change them. And most important thing is wisdom to know which one is which. It should not be that I'm trying to change what I cannot change and I'm accepting what I can actually change. So the wisdom to actually differentiate between the two. How do we gain this knowledge is very important. What happens is we have gained all the knowledge so far is through our sense organs, and all our sense organs are outside looking. Any of the thing that we see is outside looking. And now we are talking about gaining self-knowledge, which is not outside, which is obviously inside us. Now, what do? We don't have any instrument for that knowledge. So the instrument for that knowledge is talked about is Shastra, the Shabda Pramanam, through a guru. So we should read through those Shastras through a guru. That process is called Shravana. It removes our ignorance. Systematic study over a long period of time under a competent acharya who is himself established, who is a Shrotriya Brahmanist, who knows how to teach, and who is also a living example by himself, so that we can learn from their behavior also. That process is called Shravana. And then the next is, once I have this knowledge, once there are so many things that we just read, we are okay, this is the knowledge, but we have so many doubts about that. Next step is to remove the doubts, to contemplate on them, maybe ask questions. Vedanta always encourages questions. There is no problem with that, but we just need to have Shraddha that maybe I am not getting it, maybe what is written is right. With that attitude, with that learning attitude, we need to go through Manana, and then we get into Nididhyasana, mixing that sugar into our coffee so that the coffee becomes sweet, rather than that sugar just lying down below, and then we think that yes, we have put jnanam in our coffee and now it will become sweet. It has to be stirred around. That process is called Nididhyasanam. So in conclusion, in the whole thing that we saw today was that I need to dwell in my self-knowledge. We need to know about ourselves. That is the IQ part of it. And then finally, we become equipoised in all situations. That is what a sthitaprajña does. He changes his IQ into EQ. Any emotional disturbances, he's able to deal with them with the knowledge that he's acquired. How is it is being done? Mainly through regulation of sense organs. That is the first step. That is a hard step, but we need to pass through that. And then all the desires that we have, it is okay to have them, but these desires should be non-binding. What is a non-binding desire? Even if I get it, it is okay. If I don't get it, it's still okay. If I have a TV, I enjoy it. If I don't have a TV, no problem. So that is a desire, is a non-binding desire. And ultimately, with all this, I claim that I'm liberated. I am Brahmasmi. I am Purna. That claim we have to make, because nobody is actually bound. We have to inquire who is actually bound. Once we do that, we will know nobody is there who is actually bound. And so then we can claim our liberation. Hari Om. Thank you.
Now let us see how well we have understood what Ullas has said. In this DISHA program, we have now started a teaching quiz, which is a test of our listening, which is a test of our understanding. And I will request Indumati to lead us in this teaching quiz. Over to you, Indumati.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. These are a set of questions on Tattva Bodha pertaining to Jnana Yoga. The first question is, what is the meaning of Jnana Yoga? The answer is a course of discipline meant for gaining self-knowledge. The second question is, what is the purpose of gaining self-knowledge? The answer says, it gives us freedom or moksha from bondage or dependence and self-ignorance. Third question we have, what are the benefits of gaining self-knowledge? The benefits are dukkha nivritti and sukha prapti. All human beings, we wish to have a very happy life, that is by not having any difficulties or unhappiness in life, for which we need dukkha nivritti and sukha prapti. The fourth question, how can I get self-knowledge? It is by using Shastra, the Shabda Pramanam, through a competent guru who is very well versed in all knowledgeable, scholarly readings, and he is called a guru, and any pramanam should be obtained from a Gurumukhena, means through a proper guru. What are the steps involved in attaining Jnana Yoga? The 3 steps are Shravanam, that is listening, Mananam, reflection, and Nididhyasanam, assimilation. What is Shravanam then? Shravanam is the consistent Vedantic learning under a competent guru through listening. What is Mananam? Mananam removes all obstacles in the intellect and makes the knowledge into doubt-free knowledge or conviction. What is Nididhyasanam? Nididhyasanam is conversion of intellectual knowledge into emotional strength. Now we are moving forward to Bhagavad Gita, verses from 54 to 63. What does the term sthitaprajña mean? A sthitaprajña is a man of steady wisdom. That means he is a fulfilled person where there is no need to prove anything to anyone regarding anything, just as we heard Dr. Hegde sir now. What is the description of him who has steady wisdom? When a man completely casts off all the desires of the mind and is satisfied in the self, by the self, then he is said to be one who has a steady wisdom. Atmanyevatmana tushtaha. What are the three types of calamities? They are adhyatmic, those arising from disorder within the body; adi bhautik, those arising from external, outside or beings; adi daivik, those arising from unseen causes such as the cosmic forces causing rains, storms, tsunamis, etc. What is pratyahara in Yoga Shastra? The capacity in an individual to withdraw his senses at will from the fields of objects is called pratyahara in Yoga Shastra. What is the equivalent of pratyahara Vedantic terminology? It is uparati. What is anger? Deep attachment to an object and fear of its loss disturbs the individual. Such an attitude that comes between him and the object of his attachment is called anger. These are very clearly seen in the verses 56 and 57 of Bhagavad Gita. The simile of the tortoise withdrawing its limbs is used to describe
I didn't understand that.
a wise person withdrawing his sense organs from sense objects. How does a Vedantin gain sense withdrawal? Pratyahara, uparati. To a Vedantin, pratyahara, sense withdrawal, comes from his well-developed and sharpened discriminative faculty. He, in the real nature, is the Lord of the very store of bliss, infinite. Cite the verses which show the ladder of fall resulting from our wrong attitudes towards objects. These two verses are found in the verses number 62 and 63, which goes like this. Dhyayato vishayan pumsaha sangasteshu pajayate sangat sanjayate kamaha kamat krodho vijayate krodhat bhavati sammohaha sammohat smriti vibhramaha smriti bhramshat buddhinasho buddhinashat pranashyati. When the man thinks of objects, attachment from them arises desire. From desire arises anger. From anger comes delusion. From delusion comes loss of memory, then the destruction of discrimination, and from destruction of discrimination, the man perishes. Hari Om. Namaste.
Thank you, Indu ma'am, for a beautifully crafted preaching quiz covering the entire topic of the day. Thank you, Ullas, for the excellent talk. We'll come back with Disha 9 on Monday, 16th May. Before that, this Friday on 13th May, we will be commencing our study of chapter 13, that is Kshetra Kshetrajna Vibhaga Yoga. Please log in by 6:45 p.m. on Friday. Hari Om. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om.